So today and tomorrow we will see what are the important aspects of economic survey and also that of the budget this year. So before starting our discussions, let us briefly look at why this economic survey is presented and what is the use of the budget. Economic survey is presented by the government every year with the objective of telling the people of the country the conditions of Indian economy at that particular point of time, what happened in the last 1 year and what should be done in the coming year also. This economic survey is basically presented by the bureaucrats in the finance ministry. They are mostly concerned about what we call economic rationality, that is how to find solutions to the problems of the economy. They are not that much interested in political aspects. That is the reason why what we can see is that economic survey is mostly apolitical in nature. Whereas when you talk about the budget is almost always is going to be what you call a political document. So that is the reason why you can see a lot of difference between economic survey and budget in terms of their contents. 99% of the time what we find in economic survey we may not find in the budget also. Even if we look at this year's economic survey and budget also, there is a lot of difference. That is what we will see. Coming back to this year's economic survey, what are the new things it talked about? Every year in a economic survey, whoever writes that economic survey wants to leave their footprints there. That is the reason why, of course, this year again a new government has come and a new economic advisor is also there, chief economic advisor is there. Obviously, they would like to give their unique identity to the survey. So what is that new they have done in this year? They have again went back to what you call economic theories to explain the phenomena, economic activities, to explain the rationale behind economic activities. Last year also, if you look at it, last 2 years also, they focus more on the economic concepts to explain the functioning of our economy. This year also, they went a little bit beyond and focused more on analytical aspects from economic theory. What are those aspects and how did they explain? As you can see, it is divided into 2 parts, volume 1 and volume 2. This volume 1 is mostly what we call theoretical in nature, more conceptual and analytical. They look at all the macroeconomic problems of the country and they try to analyze them. They try to come out with some kind of idealistic solutions. Whereas volume 2 of economic survey, if you look at it, it is more factual. It talks about all the macroeconomic indicators and also it emphasizes on way forward, what can be done. So before discussing about this volume and volume 2, as I said, let us look at the concepts on which both the volume and volume 2 are based on. Not only that, even the finance minister in her budget speech also talked about these concepts extensively while explaining what you call the behavior of consumers in our society. So let us look at these things. As I said before, looking at all these things, let us be clear about all these conceptual aspects. You take the case of any country, any economy, the objective is to ensure rapid economic growth, right? How to ensure rapid economic growth? Because you can achieve all other objectives, inclusive growth, equitable distribution of income and wealth, infrastructure development, industrialization, sustainable development, and reducing poverty, controlling inflation, providing better services to citizens. All other objectives are directly linked to ensuring growth, rapid economic growth. So every survey that always talks about how to ensure this rapid economic growth. So from economic theory point of view, how can we ensure growth? How can we ensure this rapid economic growth? This can be done as we study in economics from demand side and supply side. This growth can be achieved through what we call demand side factors and supply side factors. Demand side and supply side factors. So how can we ensure this? As economic survey points out, let us think about what you call a two-sector economy. In economics, we talk about two-sector, three-sector, and four-sector. In a two-sector economy, we have two players. One is consumers, second one is producers. That is what we say two-sector economy. And what do consumers do? What do consumers do? They spend money on consumption. They spend money on consumption. And they also save money for future. They also save money for future. Now, in any economy, as we study, growth is possible only when there is demand for goods and services. Whatever may be the economy, capitalism, socialism, or mixed economy, or whatever may be the economy, the growth is possible only when there is demand for goods and services. And where will this demand come from? This demand comes from these two important sections. Consumption, demand. It comes from people, that is who are consumers, and also producers. So when will people demand goods and services? When can people demand goods and services? Only when they have incomes. Only when they have incomes. Right? When can they have incomes? Only when they have productive employment. Productive employment. So for any finance minister to ensure rapid growth and development, he must look at these things. How to increase the incomes of the people, how to ensure they get productive employment so that their incomes are higher. So again, this year economic survey also has spent extensively on these aspects. The entire first booklet of economic survey about these things. How to increase the demand and how to improve the incomes and employment. In at least 3 chapters are related to only these things. Next, in a two-sector economy, demand also comes from producers. That is what we call investment demand. We call it as, in economics we call it as investment demand. So when will producers invest? Please remember these kind of questions that nowadays UPSC is asking in your Indian economy paper. They are asking mostly analytical aspects. When will the producers invest more in the economic system? Again, economic survey, as I said, that it has spent a lot of time on this. When will the producers invest? When will the producers invest more in the economic system? What are the conditions? What are the conditions that are needed for producers to invest more in the economic system? They will invest more only when interest rates are low. The first condition is the interest rates should be very low. Because as we study in economics, there is an inverse relationship between investment and rate of interest. They will invest only when the interest rates are very low. Why? Because when the interest rates are low, their cost of production will be low and they can make more profits. Then let us assume that interest rates are low. Then will they produce? Need not be. Why? Because as we study in economics, during the times of recession and depression, the interest rates will be very low, but still there is no investment. Why? Because the second condition is there must be demand for their products. They will produce only when there is demand for their products. For example, again take the case of India's manufacturing industry right now. Especially take the case of four-wheelers. There is a lot of inventories that are piling up in the four-wheeler market. That is the reason why they are not producing. Why? Because absence of demand. So this is another important factor that they take into consideration. Third thing, they will invest. When will they take these investment decisions? That is what Keynes talks about, expectations. Normally all these investment decisions are made regarding future expectations. If they think that in the future economy is going to develop rapidly, they do not mind investing in the present now. Again, as I said, economic survey has spent one full chapter on this expectations. The name of the chapter is, I think, policy certainty. That is what is required. Next, fourth thing that is required is capacity utilization. Capacity utilization. Whatever they invest in terms of money, machinery, and human resources, it must be utilized to the maximum possible extent. Why? Because if capacity utilization is maximum, then you can reduce cost of production. You can improve your efficiency. The best example is India. What is the difference between a developing country like India and a developed country like America? In India, capacity utilization is very low, because of which the cost of production is very high, and the consequence of it is our goods become less competitive in the global market. So, economic survey extensively discusses about all these things. What the country has done in the last 5 years or so, and what should we do in the future. That is what it talks about. Now, from a two-sector economy, we can make improvement and go to three-sector. That is government. That is what we say C plus I plus G, the government expenditure. This is government expenditure also is one of the important catalysts of influencing aggregate demand in the economy. Now, again, as I said, this is very, very important, because every government has to spend money. It has to spend lots of money, especially in a developing country like India. The government should not shy away from spending money, because people's needs are not fulfilled. Even their basic needs are also not fulfilled. Being a welfare state, you have to spend a lot of money. But the question here is, how do you spend your money? The quality of expenditure. The quality of expenditure is what really matters here. More than the quantity, what really matters is the quality of your expenditure. And more than this, another important question here is, from where you are getting this money? From where you are getting this money? That is extremely important. Even the budget also talks extensively about these things. Both economic survey and budgets, both of them talk about extensively about these things. From where you are getting the money and how you are spending that money. As we proceed, as I said, we will talk about all these things. Next, after this government expenditure, the next catalyst for demand is what we call external sector. What we call X minus M, exports minus imports, trade, external sector. Because most of the time when we produce within the country, it is not only for our domestic consumption, but also to export the surplus to other countries around the world. And this exports will determine the growth and development of the country. For example, if you look at it, between 2003 and 2011, this was the period, you can say, the golden age of Indian economy. Because this was the period when the economy was almost progressing at 9% per annum continuously, which was unheard of, 9%. And what is the reason why we were able to progress so rapidly during this period? Because of the contribution of exports. Export demand was very, very high during this period. Our exports were almost around 27% in the overall growth rate of our economy. That was the reason why we were able to continuously achieve that kind of growth rates. Obviously, after 2011, the situation has changed. It has become almost impossible now to think about 9% growth rate also. So again, economic survey talks about this. What can be done to revive our export demand? What should be done by the government to revive this export demand? What are the steps taken by the government? Because there are certain things which are in your hands, and most of the things are not in your hands. Because when America is imposing tariffs on China, it is countries like India which will suffer the most. Whenever two big people fight, beggars suffer. Okay, so that is where the problem is. So similarly, again today morning you have seen in the newspapers that Donald Trump talking about again high tariffs in India. Every day he changes his mind before breakfast and after breakfast. Okay, so and in the process he will have the rest of the world for breakfast. So that is where the problem is. So these are the things which are not in our hands. Under this kind of uncertainty, how to improve our exports? That is what the survey says. And then, of course, ultimately, it is about two macroeconomic variables: savings and investment. Two macroeconomic variables: savings and investment. You need high level of savings and high levels of investment also. Especially for a country like India, you need high levels of savings and high levels of investment for the simple reason that our ICO or incremental capital output ratio is very less compared to developed countries. And how to improve this savings and how to improve this investment? That is what economic survey focuses on. So this is what we say, the entire economic survey is about these things. From the point of view of consumers, from the point of view of producers, investors, from the point of view of the government, and from the point of view of the external sector. Apart from this, it also focuses on other aspects like human resources. India has India has what we call demographic dividend. Are we able to exploit our strengths to the maximum possible extent or not? If we are not, what are the problems? What are the problems related to social sector development? That is what it talks about. And one chapter of economic survey is completely devoted to population. And another topic, another chapter of economic survey talks about this e-governance, data usage. We are living in an information age. How to make use of this information to the optimum extent so that we can improve the quality of our service delivery mechanisms, so that we can also improve the efficiency of our resource utilization. That is what it also talks about. So this is what broadly the survey talks about. Proceeding further, what else are the theoretical aspects that the survey focuses on? If you look at again economic theory, in economics broadly we have two schools of thought. In economic theory, we have two schools of thought. One is the classical school of thought. Second one is the behavioral. Till last year's economic survey, it was based on what we call classical school of thought. And this year, economic survey is focusing on behavioralism. And that is the reason why from the first chapter in your volume 1 to the last chapter, it talks about behavioralism. Maybe because our finance minister Nirmala Sitharaman, she studied economics from London School of Economics, where it was very popular at some point of time. So what is this behavioralism? What is this classical and what is behavioralism? Because unless we understand this, we cannot relate it to all other chapters in economic survey. What does this classical school of thought says? This classical school of thought in economics is based on the assumption of rational human behavior. It is based on the assumption of what we call rational human behavior. What does it mean? Human beings behave in a rational manner. Whatever the decisions they take, they are based on the concept of rationality. For a producer, rational human behavior means any decision that helps him to maximize profits. That is what rationality, right? Is there any producer who is working selflessly for the people? You ask Mukesh Ambani, he will tell you. Okay, he will not sell any of his products to his own family also free of cost. That is rational human behavior, because you have to maximize your profits. That is what a rational human behavior. For a consumer, what is rational human behavior? He can buy more goods at less prices so that he can maximize his satisfaction. This is what the classical theories in economics made assumption. And what these classical theories say that since human beings behave rationally, they say that markets will always be in equilibrium. There will always be equilibrium in markets. There will be neither excess production, there will be neither excess supply nor excess demand in the markets. They will always be in equilibrium. That is what classical theories in economics talk about. But the problem here is that these classical theories, when they were put into practice, they proved to be wrong. Why? Because markets are never in equilibrium. There will never be equilibrium within the markets. Why? Because as we can see, the Great Depression of 1930s or the 2008 global financial crisis, they have clearly proved that markets can never be in equilibrium. Why they can never be in equilibrium? Because human beings never behave in a rational manner. We never behave in a rational manner. If you have to behave in a rational manner, you have to say that we have to behave like a computer or a machine. But unfortunately, this is not the case. We never behave in a rational manner. We are always guided by our emotions and sentiments. We are always guided by our emotions and sentiments. So when you try to explain the macro behavior of macroeconomic variables like investment, savings, consumption, expenditure, and everything else from classical point of view, then most of the time your explanations will be wrong. Why? Because classical theories say that you always behave rationally, whereas in reality no one does this. And that is the reason why what this year's economic survey says is that let us shift our focus from this classical economic thought which dominated the policy makers' behavior for a long period of time, and let us move towards what is called behavioralism. It has said that let us move towards behavioralism. What does this behavioralism says? It says that our human behavior is not what we call predictable. It is not certain. We can never predict it. Whereas classical thinkers say that we can always predict our behavior because it is always based on the rationality. On the other hand, it is highly unpredictable. It is highly unpredictable, what you call uncertain. Because of which it says that markets will never be in equilibrium. Markets will never be in equilibrium. On the other hand, it says that markets will always be in disequilibrium. The markets will always be in disequilibrium. Why? Because human behavior is not rational. Human behavior is not rational. And that is the reason why markets will always be in disequilibrium. And what kind of disequilibrium that we are talking about in the markets? It says that either when you take any economy, that economy either will be passing through what is called virtuous cycle or what we can call it as a vicious cycle. It will be passing through either virtuous cycle or vicious cycle. So what you have to do when it is passing through vicious cycle, you must change the human behavior. You must nudge the human behavior in the direction of virtuous cycle. On the other hand, if you are going through virtuous cycle, you must ensure that they continue this with this behavior for a long period of time. How can you change this? How can you change the human behavior? As we have said that 99% of the time we don't behave rationally. So what I have to do is that if I am a policy maker, what I have to do is that I have to incentivize what we call rational human behavior, and I have to disincentivize irrational behavior. Rather than making the assumption that we always behave in a completely rational manner, let us make the assumption that we are irrational, and then I have to change your behavior, and I have to incentivize good behavior, and I have to disincentivize bad behavior. And that is what the entire economic survey talks about. This is the essence of the first booklet of entire economic survey. Even our finance minister, in her budget speech, she emphasized a lot on changing the behavior. For example, taxation. When you have to pay taxes, what does rationality says? Rationality says that every person who is eligible to pay taxes will pay the taxes because it is rational. But in our country, paying taxes is completely irrational. Who will pay the taxes in our country? In our country, the taxes are only paid by salaried class. Why? Because their taxes will be directed at the source, TDS. Otherwise, business class, they never pay the taxes. Politicians don't know what it is. Okay? They only believe in taxing the people. So how to nudge the people to move towards a regime wherein they are willing to pay taxes in a voluntary manner, rather than making the assumption that they will automatically pay the taxes. Take everything else, development of improvement this developmental and welfare schemes, subsidies. If you happen to see today's newspaper, Indian Express, the front page talks about railways, introducing behavioral economics in their functioning. Have you seen it today's Indian Express? No. You will see it next year, I think. Yeah, because railways talking about changing the behavior. Give it up campaign. What railways are saying is that if you are a rich person, if you can pay for the railway charges, normally, as you know, the railway fares are highly subsidized. So what the government is saying is that let us change the behavior of the passengers, saying that if you are a rich person, in a voluntary manner, you can give up the subsidy, and you say that I will pay the full charges. That is what we call innocence on the part of the government. Will anyone do that? But how to change the behavior, that is what, again, as I said, is the essence of the entire economic survey. So this is what the theoretical aspects that economic survey has used in this year's economic survey. Proceeding further, let us look at the state of Indian economy before discussing all the chapters of economic survey. What is the present state of Indian economy? The government has said that in the last 5 years we have made tremendous progress. In the last 5 years, we have doubled our GDP. It has taken 55 years for us to reach $1 trillion economy, and only within 5 years we could double our GDP, thanks to our Prime Minister, the dynamic personality of our Prime Minister. He pushed the GDP. That is what the Finance Minister has said in her budget speech also. Okay, of course, you don't praise the Prime Minister and you will lose your job also. So she has to do all those things. Yes, on the positive side, what happened is that Indian economy is definitely growing rapidly. At present, what is called, we have 2.7 trillion. We have 2.7 trillion dollars GDP, which is a nice thing. And the government says that the objective is to reach $5 trillion by 2024-25. This is the objective of the government. And economic survey talks about how to realize this objective over a period of 5 years. This is what. And what about the rest of the macroeconomic indicators? Inflation levels are definitely down. Inflation has come down drastically, especially in the last 4 to 5 years, thanks to both internal and external factors. What are those factors? We will analyze as we proceed. Definitely inflation has come down. It is within the manageable levels. On the positive side, what are the other positive aspects of our economy? What are the other positive aspects? Increasing GDP, inflation has come down. Yes, foreign exchange reserves are also at a very healthy position, around $420 billion, I think now. Foreign exchange reserves. Next, the government has said that it has been able to contain fiscal deficit to 3.4% of GDP. This is another what we call the achievements of the government. And what else are the achievements of the government in the last 5 years? If you look at the state of our Indian economy, anything else? Anything else? Okay, these are the achievements. What are the challenges? What are the challenges? The challenges are first and foremost agriculture. Agriculture remains stagnant. 2 years back, the growth rate was minus 0.2%. Then it has increased to 6.2%. And last year it had come down to 2.5%. This year we don't know. So agriculture is a major concern. Agriculture. Then what are the other challenges? Jobs. What the country is witnessing is definitely what you call jobless growth. Jobs is a major concern. Agriculture, jobs. Then what are the other concerns? The financial sector crisis. Financial sector crisis. When you are talking about financial sector crisis, you are talking about earlier the twin balance sheet problem. Twin balance sheet problem. A twin balance sheet problem in terms of the balance sheets of the commercial banks, the banks, scheduled banks, and also that of the companies. Financial sector crisis. Now, to add it to that, we also have crisis in the NBFCs also. After the collapse of ILFS, crisis in the NBFCs also, non-banking financial institutions also. This is another major crisis. Next important crisis is economy is slowing down. 3 years back the growth rate was 8%. In the last quarter it had come down to 5.8%. Slowing down of Indian economy. This is another major challenge. How to take it from 5.8% to 8%. The major challenge is how to ensure again rapid economic growth. This is another problem. Next problem that our country is facing is the problem related to, as we have said, infrastructure. Infrastructure crisis. You are talking about all kinds of infrastructure. You are talking about electricity. You are talking about communications. You are talking about roads. You are talking about drinking water. You are talking about everything else. Infrastructure is very, very important. How to revive this infrastructure? This is another problem that the government is facing. Next problem, next challenge is this problem is not in our hands. That is global economic slowdown. Global economic slowdown. This is a very again serious problem. As economic survey points out, compared to the previous year, last year the global GDP had declined. Obviously, when there is a decline in global GDP, it will have automatically adverse impact. Right now no longer what we call the decoupling theory will work. Our economy is fully integrated with the rest of the world. So obviously, what is happening in the rest of the world will have immediate impact on India also. Global economic slowdown. Next problem is the protectionist policies followed by these developed countries. Protectionist policies followed by the developed countries. Protectionism. And then another problem is increasing petroleum prices. Compared to last year, we have seen a big jump in petroleum prices, global crude prices. Obviously, when the global crude prices go up, everything about your economy will be destroyed. In the last 3-4 years, we could contain fiscal deficits mostly because of drastic reductions in global crude prices. Not because of efficient management of economy. It was a, it was a case wherein our Prime Minister was completely lucky and nothing else. The global crude prices went down. In 2011, they were almost $120 per barrel, and by 2015, they had come down to $28 per barrel. Now again they are going up. It is believed that that is what again Budget and Economic Survey raised concerns. They believe that again of course Economic Survey and Budget talk in different tones. Economic Survey has said that there is a concern that global crude prices will go up again this year, because if there is a global economic recovery, automatically the crude prices also will go up. And on the other hand, Budget believes that they will come down. Let us see who is right here. But this is a major concern in global crude prices, because of increase in global crude prices, our current account deficit again reached, if not dangerous proportions, definitely we have to take note of it, 2.4% of our GDP. It has almost reached 0% in 2015 to now again 2.4% of our GDP, current account deficit. Global crude prices, it will impact your fiscal deficits, current account deficits and everything else. This is another major challenge. Next challenge that we are facing is the trade war between America and China. The trade war between America and China. The trade war between America and China. Last but not the least is monsoon in India. Monsoon. This year again, monsoon is playing a very dangerous game with us. In the month of June itself, the deficiency monsoon is more than 30%. And our meteorological department always says that there will be near monsoon, near levels. What is that near levels? We don't know. If it is 100%, it is good. But they say that even 60% are also good. Meteorological department. But again, the problem is that it is not about the quantity of rain. It is about the regional variations, which will hugely impact rural demand and agriculture. So these are all the challenges that our economic survey talks about. These are all the challenges to achieve what we call 8% growth. These are all the challenges. Proceeding further, the medium term objective of the government is, what is the medium term objective of the government? In the next 5 years, India should become $5 trillion economy. Right? This is what every day our finance minister and prime minister dreams, even daytime also. Okay. So can we achieve this? Let us again analyze this from a very completely factual manner. If you have to achieve this $5 trillion economy, from today till the next 5 years, we should grow at 13% per annum. Nominal growth, not real growth. We must grow at least 13%. We must grow at least 13% per annum. And how can we divide this one? This can be divided into 8 to 9% real growth rate It can be divided into 8 to 9% real growth rate, around 3 to 4% inflation, around 3 to 4% inflation, and around 2% depreciation of our rupee. Depreciation of our rupee. Around 2% depreciation of our rupee. This is what we are talking about every year. Annual growth rate should be like this. Every year. Depreciation of our rupee. Because when you are calculating GDP in dollar terms, obviously, you have to produce more in rupee terms, because our the only thing that our rupee knows is depreciating against dollar, right? So you have to take into consideration all these things. The question here is, how can we ensure this 8 to 9% growth rate over the next 5 years? The rest of the things are mostly in our hands. Controlling the inflation between 3 to 4%, which we have done. But again, we have controlled the inflation because of external factors, as we keep on saying, because of decline in global crude prices. After that, it also becomes difficult. After that, it also becomes difficult. But the most important question is, how to ensure this 8 to 9% growth rate? How to move from the 5.8% to this 8% growth rate? Right? This is what the major challenge that our economic survey talks about. Here, these are all the challenges, all the challenges as we have mentioned, both internal and external. So, let us proceed further and look at all of them separately. Let us try to analyze all of them. What are the problems in a SWOT analysis? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are the opportunities and what are the strengths also? So let us look at all of them with the economic survey, what it has talked about, all these things. So first one is, as we talk about, is how to bring about these behavioral changes. The second chapter of our economic survey talks about how to bring about these behavioral changes. As I said, the assumption of classical economists, the rationality in human behavior, has not been successful. So what you have to do is that you have to change human behavior. How to change human behavior? That is what it says. So how can we change the human behavior? Basically, that is what we say, laissez-faire. In economics, we call it as laissez-faire. 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 Laissez-faire means, if you translate that into English, it is a free will of people. We are living in a democracy. We must give the freedom to the people to decide. And we must give the freedom to the people to decide. How can you change your behavior? How can we change the behavior of the people? This can be done in two ways. One is restricting the free will of the people, regulating the freedom of the people. How to regulate the freedom of the people? With the help of laws, rules and regulations. With the help of laws, rules and regulations. By defining what they can do and what they should not do. And what is the problem here? The problem here is that this has a very, very minimal impact. Why? Because people always come out with different kind of ways to avoid these laws and rules and regulations. For example, Income Tax Act mentions that every person who is earning income above a certain limit must pay the tax. But is it the case that everyone is paying the tax? Obviously not. Obviously. Why? Because all these things are based on the assumption of what we call rational human behavior. For example, we have so many laws. For example, the law is that you cannot smoke in public places. But is it being implemented? Obviously not. Similarly, you should not throw anything on the streets, to reduce pollution. But are they implemented? Obviously not. So what can be done? That is what the first, the second chapter of economic survey talks about. It says that this kind of regulating human behavior has failed, which we had followed for almost 70 years. It has failed. What is required is, changing behavior. Changing behavior through other means. Changing the behavior through other means. Not through what we call, not through the barrel of the gun. You must change the human behavior through other means. What are the other means that we are talking about here? That is what we call nudging people to accept something or reject something else. So let us give some examples which, again, economic survey itself had given. What are the examples it had given here? For example, take the case of taxes. This was talked about by last year's economic survey also. Taxes, subsidies and everything. Why do people don't pay taxes? Why don't we pay taxes? We don't pay taxes because, we believe that whatever the amount of money that the government is receiving through taxes is being wasted by the government. It is being wasted by the government. We don't pay taxes because there is no correlation between taxes paid by us and the facilities that we are getting from the government. For example, in India, less than 1% of people still only pay income tax. Around 2.5% of the people pay, file income tax returns. But actual amount of income tax paid by people is only less than 1%. On the other hand, in countries like America, it's almost 50%. Why? Why? Because, the facilities provided by the government were really great. There will be clean roads, better environment, very good schools, excellent health care, and all public amenities are provided by the government. That is the reason why people do not mind paying taxes. They do not mind paying taxes because the behavior of the people is influenced by the government through what we call these positive reinforcers. The government provides all kinds of facilities to the people. So people believe that the amount of tax they are paying is always used in a productive and efficient manner. That is what economic survey says. In India, people don't pay taxes because they believe that they are not able to get the kind of returns which they are expecting from the government. So what is the solution here? Is it possible for us to improve the facilities overnight? Obviously not. You cannot improve the facilities overnight. So what is the solution here? So what the solution here is that you have to create some kind of what you call some kind of positive feeling among the people, so that they will come and pay taxes in a voluntary manner. You have to nudge the people to pay taxes by creating a sense of patriotism or a sense of service to the nation. How can this be done? Very simple. Economic survey has mentioned that wherever the government works are going on, for example, construction of roads, or toilets, or any other public utility, parks, you name it, you can put it that taxpayers' money is at work here. Taxpayers' money, it is at work here, so that people feel good about paying taxes. They realize the fact that yes, we are paying taxes, our money is being used productively. That is what survey says. And what else can be done? What else can be done to motivate people to pay more taxes? It has said that identify top 10 taxpayers in the district. Identify top 10 taxpayers in the district and give them recognition. Give them recognition. Ensure that they get a sufficient amount of publicity. Ensure that they will get sufficient amount of publicity so that others also, will get influenced by this behavior. At the end of the day, we always want recognition. We always want some kind of status. And that is what economic service is. Give them that recognition and status and identify them. Next thing it has also said is that, we have so many roads, parks and public utilities. Why don't you name these roads, parks and other public utilities in the name of taxpayers? In India, if you look at railway stations and airports and everything else, roads in India, they are named after either Gandhi or Gandhi, Indira Gandhi or Rajiv Gandhi. What is their contribution? Why should we name Indira Gandhi International Airport in Delhi? Why? So they said that rename these public utilities and name them name them after the taxpayers. Take the highest taxpayer in the country and name an airport after him. I think this is what is called behavioral economics. Then people will be standing in the queue to pay taxes. This is what, this is what, otherwise why should we name all these things after these useless people? Every, Jawaharlal Nehru University, what did he do? Apart from destroying the country, what did he do? Nothing else with his economic model. So name the universities after, anyone who is willing to fund the university, anyone who is willing to, pay more taxes to fund, finance Jawaharlal Nehru University. Name that university after that person. That is what it has said. This is what the first topic is about. Never assume that people are rational. We are emotional, we are sentimental. Our behavior is always influenced by these emotions and sentiments. Everyone has this desire to be recognized by others, to be, to get the special kind of attention, status in the society. Make use of this weakness of people and then exploit this weakness and generate more revenues. That is what it has said. That is what is called behavioral economics. Next, continuing with this, it gives another example here. Economic survey gives another example here. Take the case of SBA, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Again, it says that it is about behavioral economics. How to make sure that this SBA becomes successful. Basically, the objective of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan is to reduce pollution and ensure cleanliness. That is what Mahatma Gandhi has said. Mahatma Gandhi has said that cleanliness means, he said that cleanliness is more important than independence of the country. At different points of time, he gives importance to other things. At one point of time, he said that removing the caste from our society is more important than getting independence. At other point of time, he said that remove Gandhi is more important than independence. So we let us not. But what economic survey says is that cleanliness is more important than independence. That is what Mahatma Gandhi has said, and that is the reason why our government has selected Mahatma Gandhi as the role model for Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. How to make sure that the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan or other schemes become effective? Again, behavioral factors. For example, constructing the toilets and everything is one thing. That is what we call creating physical infrastructure. But this infrastructure can be helpful only when you make people use those toilets. Only when you make people realize the importance of them. For that, you have to bring in the behavioral changes. What are the behavioral changes? You have to name and shame those people who urinate in the public, especially in the villages or in the cities. You have to regulate this kind of negative behavior. On the positive side, again you have to recognize those people who are working in the field of Swachh Bharat. What is called as in freedom movement we call them as Satyagrahis, and in Swachh Bharat we call them as Swachh Bharat Agrahis. That is what economic survey, you are laughing, that is what economic survey says. Okay, give them the recognition so that they can go, there will be more commitment. That is what the kind of behavioral change that we are talking about. Similarly, you take any other programs. Take the case of Beti Bachao and Beti Padhao program. it has said that it has definitely, become successful. Again, economic survey, these are the things which you have to write in all your papers of general studies, because this year economic survey has everything except economics. So, don't blame me if I don't talk about economic aspects here, at least for today. Tomorrow we will be talking about economic aspects only, because the entire first book is about everything except economics. So what it says is that, this program Beti Bachao and Beti Padhao, it was started from a place called, Panipat. Why? Why? Because Panipat is a place where the three major battles had taken place. The first battle of Panipat, second and third battle. So when they selected this place for this program, that means they wanted to start a major battle against, girl child discrimination. That is what symbols will play a very important role in changing the behavior. And obviously it has said that this program had become very successful. Why? Because it has, with this program, enrollment of girl child has increased in the primary schools. It has reduced, what you call, mortality rates, especially female mortality rates. And it has also improved the health conditions. And it has said, so the government has said that from Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, we can move on to the higher levels. That higher level is what is called Badlav, the next program. What is Badlav? Beti Aapki Dhan Lakshmi or Vijay Lakshmi. Don't ask me for all these acronyms. The alphabets are in English and acronyms are in Hindi. Meaning is nowhere. So that is what Beti Aapki Dhan Lakshmi or Vijay Lakshmi. That is what is called Badlav. And what is the real meaning of Badlav? Change. That is what the government wants us to believe. Okay. That is what it says, behavioral change. Similarly, there is a program called Mard. What is this? What is the meaning of Mard in Hindi? Hindi? I am asking about the meaning. I am not asking for the acronym here. What is the meaning of Mard in Hindi? Amitabh Bachchan. Right? This is Amitabh Bachchan film, right? Yes. But they have, named this to prevent atrocities against women. Who is called a real man? He is the one who fights against atrocities against women. That is what the government has said. The government has said that in the last few years they are consciously as well as deliberately following this pattern of behavioral change, because they had decided that it is not possible to bring about changes with a rational human behavior assumption. So that is the reason why we have to nudge them. We have to change their behavior. We have to ensure that people move towards what is called positive behavioral changes. This is what the second chapter of our syllabus talk about. Similarly, you have, for example, this program called Mudra Yojana, Mudra scheme. What is the meaning of Mudra? Money, currency. That is the reason why, as part of Mudra, government gives you money to the people to start their businesses. Every program, every scheme of the government, it says, is based on this concept of behavioralism. Similarly, Jan Dhan. Jan Dhan means people's money. Jan Dhan means people's money. So, by naming these schemes, what the government is planning to do, what the government wants to do is that government wants people to understand and change their behavior according to the objective of the scheme. That is what, for example, when whenever this kind of a questionnaire is given, government says that as part of behavioral changes, don't ask them about the question whether they want to opt out of the scheme or not. Normally, what is the default human behavior? Default human behavior is to put tick mark everywhere. So that is the reason why whenever you are talking about a scheme, ask them whether they want to be part of it, or rather than whether they wanted to come out of it. And similar is the case with the subsidies also. The government had come out with this give up subsidies, giving LPG cylinders. Similarly, other food subsidies also. The objective is to, here it is to bring about behavioral changes. Right now, earlier give up subsidies. Now the government is saying that think about subsidies. Give up subsidy in terms of LPGs. Now think about subsidies in terms of everything else. For example, as I said that railway charges. Think about it. Do you want the subsidy in railway charges? If you are paying the full full ticket amount, the government can use that surplus money to benefit poorer sections of society. That is the reason why the government is asking, think about it. We are saying we don't have time to think. So this is what the second topic of our economic survey, second chapter talks about it. Basically, that is the reason why from Swachh Bharat, now the government is talking about Sundar Bharat. From Swachh Bharat to Sundar Bharat, and from Sundar Bharat to Swasth Bharat. We don't know, so many Bharats are there in India. Okay, but the government, that is what Sundar Bharat means. Beautiful India. Yes, India and beautiful, they don't go together, that's a different thing. Okay, and Swasth Bharat. That is what the government is saying. They wanted to bring about these behavioral changes in an incremental manner over a period of time by offering people these positive incentives, and also by regulating their negative behavior also. This is what we say. Then come to the next topic of our this economic survey, the third chapter of economic survey. This is more closer to economy. So what does this third chapter talks about? It talks about two important things here. One is employment, second one is industries. One is employment and second one is industries. So we have three sectors: primary, secondary and tertiary. Primary sector, secondary sector and tertiary sector. Still, even now, private sector, 49% of people are employed in the private sector, more than 49. Agriculture itself is only 49%. And the problem with service sector is, the tertiary sector is, the employment elasticity is very low. In the service sector, employment elasticity to GDP is very low. So how can you increase employment? You can improve employment only through secondary sector. That is manufacturing sector, industries. So that is what economic survey starts this chapter with. Obviously, for inclusive growth, you must ensure job-led growth. That is what we say. At present, we are witnessing is jobless growth. So how to increase this? How to improve employment opportunities? How to increase the jobs in the economy? As we have said, this is possible only by focusing more on manufacturing sector, industrial sector. In the industrial sector, broadly we can divide into two categories. One is small scale industries and the other one is large scale industries. At present we call them as SMSEs. SMSE means small and medium scale enterprises. You are including it. And the other one is large scale industries. So what does this economic survey says? Now, what is the perception of the people? What it says is that the perception of the people is that in the large scale industries, they are mostly capital intensive. They are mostly capital intensive. That means they depend more on capital and machinery to improve their productivity. Whereas SMSEs are what we call them as intensive. Labor intensive. So if you look at the industrial policy of the government, right from independence onwards, since independence we had so many IPRs, again which is part of your syllabus in Indian economy. The first industrial policy resolution was 1948, then 1955, then 1977, then 1980, then 1992. These are the different IPRs we had. If you look at all these industrial policy resolutions of the government, in 1955, which was what you call a landmark policy, we have shifted towards what is called capital intensive large scale industries. Capital intensive large scale industries. Obviously, they would not be providing huge amount of employment. So what did the government do to balance this? In 1963, please remember all these things you have to write in your examination. In 1963, the government had come out with a policy for small scale industries. It had come out with a policy for small scale industries in 1963. What did the government say here for these small scale industries? The government has said that these small scale industries will be given protection from large scale industries. They will be given protection from large scale industries. That means certain goods are reserved only for the small scale industries. Certain products are reserved only for small scale industries. They cannot be produced by large scale industries. They cannot be produced by large scale industries. Next, the second incentive that the government had given to them was labor laws will not apply to them. Labor laws will not apply to these small scale industries. Third, they were given liberal financial assistance. They are given liberal financial assistance. That is, they were given loans at a relatively cheaper rates, discounted rate of interest. Fourth, the government also has the policy of buying its material from these small scale industries to encourage them from these small scale industries. That means whenever the government purchases stationery or any other machinery or material, it has to first give importance to these small scale industries. Everything is good. As we keep on saying, since independence, our policy makers have destroyed our economy with the best of intentions. Their intentions are, you can never question their intentions. So what happened here? We from 1963, we are right now in 2019, more than 50 years, almost 60 years. What happened to these small scale industries? These small scale industries have remained inefficient. They have remained inefficient. Why they have remained inefficient? Why? First and foremost, there is no competition. There is no competition. When you don't have any competition, what is the need for you to improve efficiency? Second, they have what you call perverse incentives. This is what the term economic survey also uses. Perverse incentives, PERVRSA, to remain inefficient also. To remain inefficient. That means the moment they become efficient, they lose all their benefits. To remain inefficient. What do you mean by that? To remain inefficient. For example, I am running a small scale industry. I am employing say around 90 people, and my cost of production is also very high. I am getting loans at very highly subsidized rates. Now tomorrow, in order to improve my efficiency, if I buy some machinery and employ more number of people, what happens? Immediately, the production of small scale industry I will lose. Immediately I will not get any loans. Immediately there will not be any demand for my product. Why? Because government buys its machinery only from small scale industries. Immediately the rate of interest I have to pay for my loan also will be very high. So these small scale industries in the last 60 years remained inefficient. The government had appointed so many committees. The most important of them was the Abid Hussain committee. It has said that It has said that first end this kind of monopoly, end this kind of reservation of industries, reservation of these goods for small scale industries. It is only destroying them. Of course, the government has implemented some of these recommendations. Now, why we are talking about this? Why we are talking about this? Because even now also, the perception among policymakers is that, even now also the perception among policymakers is that it is the small scale industries which will provide employment to people. The perception among policymakers is that it is the small scale industries which provide employment to people. That is the reason why the government always looks at them with what you call a lot of favoritism, what you call it as positive discrimination. And what the economic survey has proved with lots of statistics is that these small scale industries, instead of providing employment, are the most important reasons for unemployment in the country. They are the most important reasons for increasing unemployment in the country. Instead of providing employment, they are the most important reason for increasing unemployment in the country. Why? Why? Because as we have said that they have these kind of perverse incentives to remain inefficient. Even when they want to provide employment, they will not. Why? Because if the number of employees are more than 100, they will lose all the benefits that they will be getting from the government. They are capable of providing more employment. They are capable of improving efficiency. They are capable of making our exports competitive. But they won't do so. Why? Because the moment they do these things, they lose all their incentives. So that is what economic survey says. These dwarfs. That is what the term economic survey uses. Dwarfs. These dwarfs are what are responsible for lack of job opportunities in the labor market. They are responsible. So what is the solution? Once you know the problem, we must also know what the solution to the problem is. So what the survey says is that first end this kind of incentive systems. And it uses a beautiful economic concept to describe this. It says that construction through destruction. One of the important economic thinkers talked about this. Construction through destruction. That means you can create something new only when you destroy old, outdated structures. You should not feel bad about destroying old, outdated. For example, if we are satisfied with a transistor, we would not have a television. If we are satisfied with television, we would not have a computer. So you have to go, you have to always look for innovation. So what economic survey says is that, first stop these kind of incentives that are given to small scale industries, which are highly perverse in nature, which are causing more damage to the economy than doing anything good for the people. On the other hand, what it has said is that, give all these incentives to what they call it as startups. Those small industries which had come up in recent times, the startup companies, give them all these incentives to these startups. What happens here? These startups have a much brighter chance of surviving in the changed circumstances, and they have more employability also. They can provide more employment also. That is the reason why it says that make sure these MSMEs, especially which have come up in recent times as part of Make in India, Startup India and other programs, give incentives to them, give them subsidized loans, give them better market access, and reserve anything for them. Let the government purchase its machinery and everything from these startups. And if some old inefficient small scale industries, if they are dying, don't unnecessarily save them. Don't unnecessarily save them. If they are dying, let them die. Why? Because again, Economic Survey has made a comparison between India and other countries around the world. In almost every country around the world, it says that those small organizations which are 40 years old, which are 30 years old, are likely to employ very less number of people compared to those organizations which are very recent origin. So, if you have to really talk about job-led growth, what you have to do is that you must ensure that these organizations die a natural death, so that in their place these new MSMEs can come and take over and provide more employment to people. And the survey also says that please remove all these labor laws, reform your labor laws. Reform your labor laws. Let you give opportunity for the organizations to hire and fire people. Give opportunities for them to hire and fire people. Why we have so much of unemployment here in our country? Why? Because the rigid labor laws. Once this is a part of what we call the Nehruvian socialism. Once you employ a person, you cannot remove that person. It becomes difficult. That is the reason why what the organizations do, they never employ people permanently. Because of which there is no growth in the labor market, employment. Reform your labor laws. Give opportunities for people to hire and fire, so that new organizations will come. Old organizations are destroyed in the process, and people can always find productive employment depending on their abilities. And give all the incentives to these MSMEs, especially the new startups, rather than providing protection to the old inefficient small scale industries in the name of socialism. In the name of socialism. This is what it talks about. And as I said, all these questions can be asked in your Indian economy this year mains paper. This is what you have to write. And what you have to add here is that you have to add the statistics which Economic Survey had given. If you want me, I will dictate those statistics. Otherwise, you can read it. Whatever you want, you can decide. Do you want me to dictate them? Not required. Yes or want? Yes? Yes? Yes. What will you do? Okay, no problem. I will dictate it. First, let us discuss all of them. Maybe tomorrow we have time. I will dictate important statistics, not the entire Economic Survey. It is not like dictating 700 pages of Economic Survey again. I will dictate important ones. No problem. Okay. Next, and similarly, these startups, MSMEs can be given, this benefits of PSL, priority sector lending. They can given the priority. Right now, this priority sector lending is only restricted to small scale industries, very small scale, which are old. You are incentivizing again inefficiency. Stop this priority sector lending to. Right now, what is happening is that the credit should be there in the financial system, so that it can flow into the hands of the investors, so that they can invest and they can revive the economy. But what is happening is that right now what is happening is that these small industries, they have stranglehold over the entire financial system. They keep on taking loans, and those loans will turn out to be NPS, and the government again finance the banks to recover, to overcome these NPS. Again, the banks will give loans to the same people. For how long? That is where the problem is. If any organization is not able to repay the loans, stop the loans. Send it to insolvency and bankruptcy code and the NCLT, and let them take care of those things, rather than keep on financing inefficient these small scale industries in the name of socialism. This is what it talks about. Next, the next chapter of Economic Survey is what we call Economic Survey. It uses what we study in polity. How do we defend democracy? Of the people, by the people, and for Narendra Modi. Sorry, for the people. Okay. So that is what So what it says is that data has become a very important factor in ensuring capacity utilization, optimum capacity utilization. Optimum capacity utilization in this age of information. That is the reason why it says that data of the people, by the people and for the people. Data of the people, by the people and for the people. Last year I think in your polity governance the same question was asked. I said this year economic survey will answer all your questions of all papers of general studies. So what is that here? What really matters here is that in this age of what we call e-governance, in this age of digital India, what really matters is how you use our information and data. Use value of information, that is what we say. Use value of information. How can we use so much of information that we have at this point of time? So much of information. Right now, everyone is doing everything, with the help of what we call, this, mobiles and computers only. You have so much of data, lots of data that is there, but how to utilize this data in a productive and efficient manner so that, we can ensure optimum utilization of our resources. That is what this topic talks about. And economic survey says that between the private sector and the government, private sector is more efficient in utilizing the data than the government. Why? Because the problem here is that the government data is not properly structured. It is not properly structured. The government data is not properly structured. For example, if you look at any government data, it is divided into many departments and ministries and so on and so forth. You have health ministry has its own data, education ministry, rural development, urban development, agriculture, industry, finance, women and child development. Like this, there is so much of data which is completely diversified. And what is happening is that since all this data is not put at one particular place, for example, I am a villager, I will be receiving the benefits of various development schemes. I will be receiving the benefits of Food Security Act. I will be receiving the benefits from NREGA. I will be receiving the benefits from Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, from NRHM, from Prime Minister Awas Yojana, and from Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. I will be receiving the benefits of subsidies in agriculture. So what is happening is that this data is not properly maintained and updated, because of which what is happening is that there is so much of duplication of work, there is so much of corruption, there is so much of wastage of resources. There is so much of wastage of resources. So what the survey says here is that we must ensure that whatever the information that the government has, this information has to be channeled in a productive manner so that the ministries and departments can use this information to come out with rational policies. To come out with rational policies. For example, NREGA. Take the case of NREGA. How many people have got benefits out of NREGA last year? Say the economic survey says 264 crore people, 264 crore mandates of employment was created. But this is not enough. What is required is who are the people who have got the employment. Second, how many days of employment they have received. Third, whether they have received the wages on time also. And most importantly, why did they opt for NREGA? For example, if NREGA is successful, it means that there is a lot of unemployment in the country. Yes? Why do people opt for the NREGA? Why? Because they are not able to get employment. If NREGA is successful means there is a lot of unemployment in the country. On the other hand, the number of man days of employment under NREGA is coming down means it is a good sign. That means people are able to get alternative sources of employment. And there are other reasons also here. For example, most of the people, why they are getting out of NREGA? Why? Because they are not able to get the wages on time. In the private, in the private sector, even if the wages are low, you will be paid the wages immediately. Whereas within the NREGA, they are not paid wages on time. So how does the government know about all these things? Only when it has what is called real-time updation of data. It has real-time updation of data. Please remember, in all these questions were asked in your polity governance paper only. It has real-time updation of data. And that is what economic survey says. It says that it is not about the lack of data, or it is not about insufficient data. It is about an updation of data on real-time basis with the names of beneficiaries clearly written. That is the reason why recently what did the government do? Government has made Aadhaar mandatory for most of the developmental welfare schemes. With Aadhaar, the government will come to know whether you have got money under NREGA or not, whether your children have got benefits of SSA or not, whether Food Security Act did you receive the food grains or not. That is why the government had come out with this JAM. Government has said that no problem, if you don't give bread to the people, you will give them jam. Okay, Jan Dhan, Aadhaar and mobile. This is what economic survey says. It says that private sector, and the economic survey also says, makes a very interesting point. It says that this data should be treated as public good. Public good. What do you mean by that? If anyone wants to access this data, any private sector or NGO, anyone else wants to access this data, they must be able to have unconditional access to this data. Because it should be treated as a public good. I don't have to pay for, I don't have to pay to the government to access this data. For that, you must implement RTA, right information and everything else also, so that people can have access to this real-time data. For example, I have a private sector company, and I want to start a big, say, educational institution in a particular area. If I have the data about the how many graduates are there in that particular area, then I can talk about including many postgraduate courses in my institution. Similarly, I want to start a graduation college. I would like to know how many people are undergraduates who have passed their 10th or 12th standard. If that data is available to me, I can do the thing. Similarly, I want to construct a super specialty hospital in a particular locality. If I know about the details of the patients there, then I can take a proper decision. That is what economic survey says. Treat this data as a public good. Next, beyond this, nothing else is there in this chapter. Next chapter of economic survey talks about judiciary. And another interesting thing here is that in all these chapters, every chapter starts with a quotation, and all these quotations are given by Indian philosophers. BJP. Right? If you look at last year's economic survey, previous year's economic surveys, mostly you find foreign economists, John Maynard Keynes or Rothschild and Rodin or anyone else, all these top level economists. Nowadays you don't find any of them. You find only Indian philosophers. That is the reason why in almost the entire economic survey, all the chapters starts with quotations of Kautilya's Arthashastra. By the time you read a complete economic survey, you can be sure of one thing: you have read the full of Arthashastra. That is what, because behavioral change. The government wants to make us feel good about our own people. What is India's psychology? We like anything that is foreign. We learned this from our role models, Jawaharlal Nehru. He always liked foreigners, irrespective of their gender. That's a different thing. We'll not go into all those things. So coming back here, that is what it starts. Matsya. It starts with Matsya. What is this Matsya? Matsya means fish. What is this the justice in this fishes in this fish kingdom? Big fish eating small fish. We have that kind of that kind of legal system in our country? Obviously not. So that is what economic survey says. It says that this growth and development depends on the kind of legal system that we have. Why? Because what is the reason why India is not able to attract FDI? The question that was asked in your economy 2 years back. Why we are not able to attract FDI? One of the important reasons is the foreign investors always believe that India is an extremely difficult country to trade with. They believe that Indians are not good at enforcing contracts. For example, I am importing something from a foreign country. So what I will do, I will give him advance. Say I am importing something for say 100 crores. I will say advance. I will pay advance of 10 crores, and I will get the consignment. After getting the consignment, I will say that get lost. That is what Indians. We are not good at enforcing contracts. Now that exporter, what he will have to do? He will have to come to India and file case against me. I will be extremely happy because once the case is filed, it means that justice will never be done. Okay. That is the reason why whenever you can see, when we talk about our legal system, whenever you see that it is always the criminals who always have a lot of faith in our judiciary. Whenever the cases are filed against the political leaders, they are so happy. You can see them with a lot of happiness on their face. They say that we have complete faith in our judiciary. And they will say that the law will always take its own course. What is that? We don't know. Okay. This is the standard. Okay, that is the reason why India is not able to attract FDI. Everything is linked here, economy. India is not able to attract FDI. Coming back here, just as for a small distraction, I have 2 wishes in my life before I die. One is, I want to become a Supreme Court judge. Why? I will tell you. Second one is, at least for one term, I want to be MLA of Karnataka State Assembly. Karnataka State Assembly, at least one term. Every day I will be staying in 5-star hotels. Every day, someone will come and give me 100 crores just for small change, for day-to-day expenses. Every day I can travel in private flights, private jets. This is one of my wishes. The other one is important, Supreme Court judge. Why? Why? Because as the economic survey says, out of 365 days, our judiciary functions only, around 190 days. They have almost 180 days holidays. Tell me, is there any profession in the world where they get 180 days of leave? We are continuing with still colonial practices. During the summer, they take a break for 48 days, 49 days. During the winter, they take break for 20 days. During rainy season, they take a full break. When do they work? They don't. And if you try to say something, then what will they say? Contempt of court. How dare you criticize us? That is where the problem. That is what economic survey says. It says that if India wants to call itself a developed country, if you want to improve your ranking in ease of doing business index, if you want to improve your ranking in global competitive index, you must make your judiciary efficient. More than 3.5 million, 35 crores cases are pending with our judiciary. 3.5 crores, sorry, not 35. 3.5 crores, 35 million cases are pending with our judiciary. And when will they come out with the judgment? Nobody knows. Nobody knows, including the judges. So what economic survey has done is that they have conducted a very scientific research about what are the cases that are pending, where these cases are pending, and for how long these cases are pending, and who is responsible for this kind of delay. And what is the conclusion they had come out with? They had come out with the conclusion that maximum number of cases are pending with lower level judiciary. Maximum cases are pending with lower level judiciary. And these cases are pending for quite a long period of time. It can be anything between 4 to 10 years, for a quite long period of time. And most of these cases are related to both civil and criminal. Most of them are civil cases. Most of them are civil, but they are both civil and criminal. And the delay is because of a delay in investigations and also in delivering judgments. The day when you go to the case to file a complaint with the judiciary, by the time the final judgment comes, the gestation period is very, very long. In developed countries, it is very less, the gestation period between filing cases and coming out with the judgment. Whereas in a country, in a developing country like India, it is very long. That is what we say, justice delayed is justice denied. Not only this, what is happening in India here because of it, India is not able to attract investment. Why? Because as I said that the exporter, he sends all the consignment, I will take it and I will not pay him the money. Then he will have to file case. After he files cases, when will the judgment come? After 10 years. Then what will I do? If the judgment is given by the district judiciary, I will go to High Court. High Court another 10 years. Then I will go to Supreme Court. Supreme Court another 10-15 years. Then I will file a review petition. Another 10-15 years. Then I will file another review petition over this review petition, asking for a stay. And how many years? In between 3 generations must have passed peacefully. This is where the problem is. So what is the solution? These are things again which you shall be studying as part of judicial reforms in your paper 2. The solution is that, economic survey says that solution is not that much difficult also. It has said that appoint around 2,300 judges at lower level courts. He can solve all the cases. At the High Court level, appoint around 65 judges, I think. That is what it says. At the High Court level, 93 judges you appoint. The problem can be solved. That is what it says. The basic problem is, lack of sufficient staff, the strength, sufficient number of judges. That is what it says. That is the reason why it says that appoint more number of judges. The problem can be easily solved. These are the things which the government can do. What else can be done by the government? The government, can empower regulatory authorities, because most of the financial crimes can be dealt by regulatory authorities. The government can, request the courts to use technology, computerization of all the cases. Then the government can request judiciary to come out with a time limit, fix a time limit for completion of what you call judgments in a particular case. All these things you will be writing as part of your polity governance paper also. So this is what this topic, chapter of economic service is. At the end of the day, unless we improve our legal system, there is no way we can attract more foreign investment. The Prime Minister can go to all the countries around the world, all the 200 countries around the world, requesting them to come and invest in the country. The solution lies within the country, not going to foreign countries. You have to improve your legal system. Next, the next chapter of economic survey is about policy uncertainty. The next chapter is about policy uncertainty. So what is this policy uncertainty? What did they talk about? If you want, again, the question is how to ensure rapid growth and development. We are trying to find solutions for it. In all the chapters we are talking about only that only. We say that there are 2 things that are needed to ensure rapid growth and development of a country. First one is political stability. Second one is policy certainty. We need political stability and policy certainty. We need both of them. Fortunately, the country had political stability for the last 5 years, and we will have political stability for the coming 5 years also. So what is required is policy certainty. What do you mean by policy certainty? On the other hand, what happens with the policy uncertainty? Economic survey says that between 2011 and 2014, this was the period when we witnessed high levels of uncertainty in public policies. This was the period when the country witnessed high levels of uncertainty in public policies. That means you don't know what the government is going to do tomorrow. You don't know what the government is going to do tomorrow. Apart from this policy uncertainty, this period also witnessed policy paralysis. It also witnessed policy paralysis. That means unwillingness on the part of the government to come out with a new policy solutions to the problems faced by the country. Why? Because of policy paralysis, because of the political instability the country was facing at that point of time. Coalition government fighting for its own survival. So that is the reason why, if you see this, the growth rate had come down drastically. The growth rate also had come down. Around this time 9%. By 2014 it had come down to less than 4.5% according to previous GDP statistics. It had come down. So the survey says that again the country recovered, and by 2016, 2015-16, it had recovered, and we almost achieved again 8% growth rate thanks to policy certainty. Why? Because new government had come to power. It has ensured by 2016-17 we had achieved policy certainty. We have achieved again 8% growth rate. From 4.5% we moved towards 8% growth rate thanks to policy certainty. Why this policy certainty is important? Why it is important? As we have discussed earlier, whenever as an investor, when I take decisions related to my investment, how do I make decisions related to my investment? We have discussed in the beginning, what are the factors that I take into consideration? First one is the rate of interest. Second one is the demand, demand for products. And the third one is the expectations regarding future. And the fourth one is capacity utilization. So, all investment decisions depend on future expectations. The other day, our finance minister, after the budget, she was interacting with the CIA, Confederation of Indian Industries. So she was asking these CIA members to unleash their animal spirits and invest heavily in the economy. She was asking them, you are the angels, you are the gods, you must invest in our economy. And what is their response? Their response is, how can we invest when there is uncertainty? Because budget has created so much of uncertainty among them. On the one hand, the government was praising all these industrialists, super rich people. On the other hand, the government had also punished them in the form of so many taxes. For example, I am buying shares in the stock market, and after some point of time, I sell the shares for a profit, what is called as capital gains. And what did the government do? Government is taxing on my capital gains also. And I am making some profits. The government has increased the taxes on my profits also. And apart from that, my income is very high. The government has said that, you belong to super rich category, you have to pay more tax. And what is the consequence here? In the last 3 days of our stock exchange, they lost $30 billion, not one or two. That is what happens with policy uncertainty. $30 billion of wealth was completely washed out in the 3 sessions of BSE, Bombay Stock Exchange, for 3 days. It is both, due to internal as well as external factors. External factors are, America's continuous, fight with China. External factors are, America giving warning to India. that your tariffs are very high. External factors are the global recession. Obviously, global economy is slowing down. External factors are uncertainty regarding the global crude prices also. So that is the reason why this chapter of economic survey talks about the importance of policy certainty in maximizing the growth potential of the country. Obviously, that is what I said. The economic survey is prepared by bureaucrats. Budget is prepared by politicians. Why did Nirmala Sitharaman impose tax on the rich people? Why? Because 4 years back, Rahul Gandhi made a statement. He said that Modi Sarkar is a suit boot ki Sarkar. Right? That means it was a government for the rich people. You have to tell Rahul Gandhi that we are a government for the poor people only, against rich people. How? Tax rich people more. That is what, everything is politics here. What is the amount of money the government is planning to get through this super rich tax? The government is saying that it will be getting around 3,800 crores as tax revenues, which is peanuts for the government. When your budget is 27 lakh crores, right? What is 3,008 crores? Peanuts. But it is symbolic measure to tell the people of the country that we are willing to tax the rich people. We are not afraid of taxing the rich people. Obviously, markets will not go by what the government thinks. Markets will have their own thinking. That is the reason why markets reacted very negatively. And that is what I said the other day when I was listening to this one, CNN and IBN. I think there was 1 hour discussion of a finance minister with the captains of Indian industry. Every member there talked about this only. Ensure some kind of continuity, certainty in policies so that we can do business. I'll just give you one example here again regarding policy certainty. So the government, take the case of automobile industry. Automobile industry in India, as all of you know, is undergoing severe problems because of lack of demand. Inventories are piling up. And on the other hand, what the government is talking about is SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. As part of Sustainable Development Goals, you have to reduce your carbon emissions, right? So the government is saying that you must move towards newer technologies. That is the reason why we have these BS norms, right? Right now, BS4, and the government is pushing the automobile industry to move towards what is called BS6 norms. These things you will be studying as part of your environment. BS6 norms, right? Now, this automobile industry have said that yes, definitely we will move towards BS6 norms. And the chairman of one of the industrialists who was participating there, he had raised a pertinent question here. He said, you have asked us to move towards BS6 norms. We are definitely moving. For that, we have to invest around 1.5 lakh crores of rupees in new technologies. Again, we don't have any problem because that is needed from sustainable development point of view. Now, suddenly in the budget, what the government has said is that no, we are not talking about this thing. We have to move towards EVs, electronic vehicles. Then what will happen to this 1.6 lakh crores, 1.5 lakh crores which they are investing? When you keep on changing your policies, there must be what you call consistency in policies. And that is where the government is plundering here. Why? What is one of the major weaknesses of the present government? The major weakness of present government is that it does not know really in which direction it has to move. This is what you call a criticism based on what is called ground level realities. Why the economy is really not picking up as it should have been? Because the government does not know what it is doing or what it has to do. On the one hand, the government wants to showcase its socialist credentials by implementing so many welfare and developmental schemes, knowing fully well that most of the schemes are highly leaky, more highly corrupt. On the other hand, the government wants to incentivize the industry also. But at the same time, the government is also imposing more tariffs. There is so much of what you call policy uncertainty. If you look at India at this point of time, 2019, it is just like what India was in 1991. more tariffs, more regulations, more customs and excise duties, and more conditions imposed on private sector. It is just like that one. That is where economy is not. And how can you? That is what one of the industries had raised the question. He said that you want us to bring out our animal spirits. We are willing, but where are the conditions? Show us the demand. Create necessary conditions for us, so that we can revive our investment plans. When the government is saying that automobile industry must move towards EVs, electronic vehicles. What about the 1.5 lakh crores of investment they have made in BS6 norms? What will happen to them? You need some kind of policy certainty. And Nirmala Sitharaman, simply she could not answer this question. She said that no, I am not forcing you to adopt EVs. Right now, we are talking about EVs only in public sector transportation. Again, in public sector transportation, you have to produce the vehicles. Who will be producing the vehicles? Private sector. And the government says that we will buy only those vehicles which are electronic vehicles. And what about all the things which they already have produced? That is where the problem is. And that is what exactly this chapter talks about. Policy uncertainty. And definitely the industry expected better policies from the government in terms of creating a positive atmosphere. But the problem is that, as I said, that the government is more socialistic than at any point of time socialists can ever think of. It is more leftist than the leftists themselves. In the process, the government is left out. That is where you have to be clear about what you want. You have to be clear about what you want, in which direction you want to take the country forward. And that is where there is like the government wants the private sector to invest. You call them angels, but you are creating hurdles in their path. For example, in the last 4 or 5 years, the government has imposed so many tariffs on imports, especially those imports which are necessary for producing exports. And what happened because of this? Our export competitiveness has declined, because of which our exports also had come down. These are all so many things. On the one hand, you talk about Make in India. On the one hand, you talk about Startup India. But on the other hand, you are imposing these kind of unreasonable tariffs. That is where the problem is. Highly uncertain policy environment is not conducive for rapid growth and development. This is what it says. What is the solution? Economic survey provides very simple solution. It says that make sure that your policy actions are highly predictable. You have to do the same thing again and again in a boring, sickening manner. But you make sure that everything is predictable. And it says that whatever you say, you are doing it. Whatever you say, there cannot be any gap between the cup and the slip. Most of the time, government announces policies without actually implementing them. That creates again uncertainty. And third thing is that whatever documents you prepare, you ensure that whatever the policy making that you come out with, you ensure that those policies are implemented, and you come out with continuity in policies. You must ensure continuity. This is what we study in administration also, what we call it as incrementalism. Incrementalism. There must be incrementalism. For example, when the government keeps on changing this norms, especially for industrial sector, in terms of the standards, what happens? It creates uncertainty. They don't know what to do. What can they expect tomorrow? For example, take the case of again in a money market. In a money market, if you keep on changing the repo rates and reverse repo rates, how can the private sector come out with their investments? You require stability in our exchange money markets, interest rates, whether it's repo rates or reverse repo rates. Of course, on the positive side, what we can say is that in the last 3 years or so, when we had this MPC, Monetary Policy Committee, we could ensure some kind of stability in interest rate regime. That is what you call a good aspect. But the second thing is that, at the lowest level, it is not implemented. For example, whenever RBI reduced the interest rates, repo rates, it has not been transferred to the customers by commercial banks. That is what we will see as part of our second chapter, second booklet of our economic survey. This is what it talks about. The next chapter of economic survey talks about is about our population, demography. It talks about demography. Yes. So what it says? So it says that India is one of the few countries in the world, which is in this period of what we call golden age of a demographic dividend between 2005 and 2050. That is what economic survey says. It says that between 2005 and 2050 is the period wherein we can maximize our potential. We can maximize our potential. That is what it says. Why? Because during this period we have more number of population who are in the working age compared to old age population. That is what we call demographic dividend. Even now also it says that around 50% of our population is less than 25 years. That is where we can make use of our demographic dividend. And again, if you look at this, what are the good things that have happened? We have definitely reduced our population growth rates. Population growth rates in the 70s it was around 2.5% per annum. Population growth rate was 2.5%, and it has come down to 1.3% now. It has come down to 1.3%. From a high of 2.5%, it has come down to 1.3%. And most of the states, in India have less than 1% growth rate. Most of the states, especially the South Indian states and Western states, their growth rate is less than 1%. Population growth rate. So what does it says? It says that there are regional differences. There are certain states, the north and eastern part of the country, wherein the fertility rates are still very high. Population growth rate is still very high. It says that. Now, how to make use of this declining population? Population growth rates are coming down. It gives examples of, say, something like providing basic education and health facilities to people. Providing basic education and health facilities to people. So what it says is that, if you take the case of South Indian states, especially at the primary school level, you have one teacher for 50 students. One teacher for 50 students. In most of the schools in South India, especially primary school level, there are less number of students that has been stipulated. They have only 30 students. Why? Because population rate has come down drastically. And in all these states, especially primary school or then higher standards, what is happening is that they are having surplus in terms of educational infrastructure. They are having surplus in terms of educational infrastructure, in terms of schools as well as in terms of teachers. That means from now till 2050, the government need not invest in primary education in these states. That is how you have to prioritize your needs. That is the reason why this demography is very, very important. You should know, at what age your population at this point of time is, and you should always decide, how to spend your monies. And what it says is that, thanks to, this, declining fertility rates, the population rates in South India, they have surplus in terms of education, infrastructure, so that they can spend that money on other things. Similarly, in primary healthcare centers and other child nourishment and everything else, they are having surplus. On the other hand, it says that in other states, like especially North Indian states, Hindi speaking belt, they are not sufficient. They are not sufficient. The education infrastructure is not sufficient. But what is the advantage of these states? If you look at South Indian states, they have age population. Population is aging very fast. So obviously, the South Indian states have to spend a lot of money on pensions, PFs, and old age schemes. Whereas in North Indian states, they have good amount of population who are going to be part of what you call working age population. The government says that working age population between 10 to 60 years. So on the other hand, they have this advantage of adding more to working age population. But the only problem here is that how to transform this demographic bulge into demographic dividend. How can we utilize this population? How to transform this demographic bulge into demographic dividend? And for this, the solution is, these states must focus on social infrastructure. That is what it says. Social infrastructure in the form of education and health. In the form of education and health. So that this demographic bulge can be transformed into demographic dividend. That is what economic survey talks about. Next chapter is about, as I said, from Swachh Bharat to Sundar Bharat via Swasth Bharat. So many Indias. So it says that, when we launched this Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, it is one of the schemes which are, what you call successful, of the present government. Why do we call it as successful? Because, if you go back, in 2014, that is what economic survey says. In 2014, there were around 10 crore rural, population or rural households who did not have any toilet. 10 crore rural households who did not have any access to toilet. That means 55 crore population. 55 crore population who did not have any access to basic amenities, the toilets. And what are they doing? Open defecation. Everything is done openly. And what is the consequence? Yes, health issues. Water pollution, air pollution, health issues. The consequence is health issues. And what economic survey points out is that after this SBA was implemented on a mission mode era, after it was implemented on a mission mode era, we have provided these toilet facilities to almost, it says that almost 98% of our population. 98% of our population is covered under Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. 98% of population is covered under Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. And it also says that many states have been declared ODF states. ODF means, yes, open defecation free states. And how did this, how did this change take place? Because of various factors. The government had created the infrastructure. What did the government do as part of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan? The government has provided compensation for people to construct toilets. 6,000 rupees, 12,000 rupees of money was given for people to construct toilets. Then the government also looked at behavioral change. How? Like as we have discussed earlier, those who are indulging in open defecation, they will be named and shamed by the panchayats. You have to change the negative behavior, otherwise people are not willing to change their behavior. Similarly, you have this in rural areas, women are not willing to get into married to a family where there are no toilets also. Behavioral change. This is what the government has said. It has taken up this SBA on a mission mode, and because of which the government has been able to achieve tremendous success. Yes, we can say that it is a very good success. As the economic survey says, almost 98.9% of our population is covered under SBA, and over 9.5 crore toilets were built. One of the important reasons of why Narendra Modi government had come back to power is because of these schemes: Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, Ujjwala, and this Jan Dhan Aadhaar and mobile. These are the schemes which wherein they could see the real benefits for themselves. That is the reason why people have voted. People are not idiotic in their preferences. This is what it says. Next, beyond this, not much is there in this chapter. We don't have to study. The next topic it talks about is how to ensure inclusive growth. How to ensure inclusive growth through sustainable, affordable, and reliable energy. How to ensure inclusive growth through sustainable, affordable, and reliable energy. This is what the topic says. Again, as usual, it starts with a statement from Rig Veda. You have to go to only Indian philosophers, right? So let us not go into those things. So what is the most important statistic that is necessary for us to write in the examination? India has at present 18% of world population. We have around 18% of world population, excluding UP and Bihar. If you include them, it will be 200%. Okay. So, and we use only 6% of energy. 6% of world's primary energy. And for example, even in 2017 also, 53% of our population do not have access to LPG cylinders, cooking gas. They don't have access to cooking gas. And energy efficiency also very low in India. Is also very low. What do you mean energy efficiency? Please remember, this topic is very important for this year's examination in the mains Indian economy. This is where you can get lots of questions. Energy efficiency is very low in India. What do you mean by energy efficiency? How efficiently we are utilizing our resources, energy resources. It is also very, very low in India. Not only that, as we have said, consumption is also very low. And what in India we have is what is called energy poverty. Energy poverty. So, for example, if you take power sector, 60% of our generation of electricity comes through thermal power, coal, thermal power. And what is the problem with this? It is highly polluting. It is highly polluting. And sustainable development goals, we talked about 17 sustainable development goals. One of them talk about clean energy, sustainable development. So we have to move towards clean energy. What are the sources of clean energy? What are the sources? Hydel power, then solar energy, wind energy. And what the economic survey says that in terms of India's ranking in terms of India ranking among the rest of the countries around the world, we are fairly better in terms of wind energy or solar energy or hydel power. But within our country, taking into consideration the availability of these resources, their efficiency is not fully utilized. Take the case of hydel power. We are not able to generate the kind of electricity that we should have compared to the kind of resources we have. Same is the case with solar energy. For example, solar energy for a very long period of time, we could not use it because of high tariffs. What did the government do? The government had, subsidized the solar, this energy sector, because of which, we have improved our, solar energy production as well as consumption. It has come down drastically. This is what economic survey also talks about. It says that, if I tomorrow I will give you the statistics. I think, compared to the developed countries around the world, India's energy efficiency, energy intensity is better compared to what developed countries at that point of time. For example, when India's GDP is at present is $2.7 trillion. If you take a case, make a comparison with America at that point of time when its GDP was $2.7 trillion, our energy efficiency at this point of time is far better than America's energy efficiency at that point of time. Definitely, it was good. But the only thing is that, at that point of time in America, there was no this kind of scientific and technological developments. Now we have so much of scientific technological developments which should have improved our energy efficiency. And for this, economic survey says that the government must come out with proper policies regarding the energy sector, especially regarding the use of this primary sources of energy. For example, it gives a simple example. When we start using these LED bulbs, LED bulbs, they require far less energy than for conventional lights. So if the government can subsidize these LED bulbs, in fact, the government also has provided these LED bulbs free of cost to most of the villages, which resulted in improvement in our energy efficiency. That is what economic survey talks about. And it talks about the various programs that the government is implementing. But again, as I said that these things we can see it tomorrow, because again we'll be discussing all these things, the facts tomorrow as part of rest of the things. Next, as part of energy efficiency, the economic survey also talks about EVs, electronic vehicles. It says that we should move towards these electronic vehicles. But again, what is the problem with EVs? What is the problem with these EVs? First one is, the problem is cost of production. Again, as I said that the difference between conventional petrol or diesel vehicle and electric vehicle, they require completely different technologies. When I was listening to the discussion of finance minister with these captains of Indian industry, so that person has said that industry has said that for automobile sector to produce one car or any other vehicle, we require at least around 34,000 different parts, small and big, everything. Whereas in electric vehicles, they require around, I think 600 parts. So we have to move from this to this, means whatever the producers who are producing these small parts, they will lose their jobs and demand. And we have to invest a lot more on these 600 parts. And second problem is charging of electric vehicles. It takes some of these vehicles. It takes the whole night. Also, you have to charge them to travel 1 kilometer, not 1 kilometer, whole night. Otherwise, the best way of traveling, best sustainable, you push them from behind. It is healthy. It is also environmentally friendly also. Whereas the fastest charging is, it takes at least minimum half an hour. That is the reason why this is a problem with these electric vehicles. This is what economic survey talks about, all these things. Next, the next chapter is about MG NREGA, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. So what it says is that, what is the objective of this NREGA? Why NREGA had come into existence? Because in rural areas, agriculture had become highly unpredictable as an activity and as a profession. It has become highly unpredictable because of the variations in monsoon. So people at any point of time are seeking huge amount of jobs. They are looking for jobs. That is the reason why in 2005 it was implemented. And what it says is that, what economic survey says is that, even though this NREGA was implemented from 2005, only in the last few years, that is in the last 3-4 years, it had become effective. In the last 3-4 years, it had become effective. Why it had become effective? Because BJP government was in power. But that you cannot write in the examination. So, why it had become effective? It had become effective because of the use of technology. That is what it says. NREGA had become effective because of the use of technology. How this technology has been used to make this program effective? First one is in preparation of muster rolls. What are the muster rolls? Basically, they are prepared by the Gram Panchayat. They provide information about the number of people seeking employment, and for the number of days also they are seeking employment. Because on the basis of these muster rolls, employment will be provided. In preparation of muster rolls. Second one is in payment of wages. Timely payment of wages. Timely payment of wages. Third one is in evaluation of works. Evaluating the works, the quality of works, quantity as well as quality of works, geotagging of these works. And fourth one is in identifying corruption. In identifying corruption. In identifying corruption. So what it has done is that in the last 3-4 years, thanks to this use of technology, NREGS had become very effective. It had given in a hypothetical example of two farmers. One farmer, his crop has failed, so he is seeking employment under NREGA. He is seeking employment under NREGA. He has another alternative also. The other alternative is working in the field of others, in the fields of other farmers, because most of the farmers also act as laborers also, because this year his crop has failed. So before implementation of before the use of technology, this farmer had lost out. Why? Because even if he had applied, he would not get immediate work. Second, even if he gets the work, he will not be paid full wages. Third, even if he is paid for wages, even if he is paid full wages, but not immediately, after a gap of at least 2-3 months, deferred payment of wages, right? And on the other hand, take the case of another farmer. He has a very good crop this year, because agriculture will be there. Take Kharif and Rabi seasons combined together. How many days of work will be there in agriculture? Let me test your practical knowledge of economy. Kharif and Rabi seasons combined together, how many months of work will be there for farmers? Depending on the number of crops. Normally, if irrigation facilities are not there, you have 2 crops in an year. If you have irrigation facilities, you can have 3 crops also. If you have 2 crops, you'll be getting around 6 months of employment. 3 crops means around 8 months of employment. So, after getting 6 months of employment, what about the remaining 6 months? What should he do? prepare for UPSC. Right? He does not want to compete with the people who are below him in terms of everything else. That is the reason why he will not prepare for UPSC. He will look for employment under NREGA. So let us assume that the second farmer, he had a very good crop, and second farmer is under the new system. What happens? Immediately he can register himself with the panchayat, online registration of people seeking employment as part of master rolls. Immediately he will get the work, and there will be timely payment of wages also. So he will be benefiting both here, both from his own farm and also getting 100 days of employment as part of NREGA also. That is what economic survey has pointed out. In the first case, the first farmer has failed to get the benefits, either because of the failure of his crop and also not being able to get timely employment and wages under NREGA. Why? Because there was a lot of delay, corruption, and also wrong identification of beneficiaries. Now what happens is that what did the government do? As part of NREGA, the government had linked these muster rolls with Aadhaar cards. They have linked the muster rolls with Aadhaar cards. And what is the benefit here? There cannot be any ghost workers. Ghost workers. Because everything is linked with Aadhaar. Automatically, who is applying, you will know. And this is how the government had reduced a lot of corruption in implementation of NREGA. This is how it has also ensured better wages also. This is what economic survey says. How to use technology. Again, all these questions can be asked in your economy also. How to use technology. Next, the last chapter is regarding minimum wages. The last chapter is regarding minimum wages. For any country to progress, that is what we say, it must have very predictable governance systems. Now, what is the problem for a country like India? The problem for a country like India is that there is so much of diversity. There is so much of diversity in the country. Can you have a uniform, system for the entire country? Obviously not. And that is the problem the country is facing when it comes to minimum wages also. The country is facing with regard to minimum wages also. Take the case of NREGA only. For example, in a state like Haryana, the minimum wages of NREGA are around, I think, 275 rupees per day. More than that also. On the other hand, in states like Chhattisgarh, the minimum wages are around 150 rupees only. And this is, we are talking about the government schemes. And take the private sector. In private sector, you have different kinds of people working there. You have the formal sector. You have the informal sector. You have large scale industries. You have small scale industries. You have industries in urban areas. You have industries in rural areas. You have different wages in agriculture and non-agriculture works. So with so much of diversity, and then you have different regions, different states, in the North Indian, South Indian, eastern part of the country, different states. With so much of variation, the question is, what can be the minimum wage which can be applicable for the entire country? So what should we take here? Should we take the lowest common denominator or the highest one, or the average, combining lowest and highest? What should we do? Or can we have a minimum wage in a country like India? And that is what economic survey says. It says that almost all other countries in the world have a uniform minimum wage. And another thing is that the problem is that you have different professions. In each and every profession, minimum wages can be different. In agriculture, minimum wages can be low. In software, they can be different. Right? can the income of a software, the minimum wage of a software engineer will be say the same as that of an agricultural laborer? Yes? Obviously not, because agricultural laborer is more productive. He is more productive. So how to fix these minimum wages? And then more importantly, how to enforce these minimum wages? Added to that, in India we also have this labor laws which talk about family labor. If your family members are employed, what is the opportunity cost of employing your family members also? This is what even this committee, Swaminathan committee also on agriculture discussed about. When you are talking about deciding the MSP, minimum support price, the government has said that minimum support price will be at least 50% above the cost of production. But the government has said that this 50% above the cost of production will not take into consideration so many other things, like the opportunity cost of the wages. Okay, that is where again the problem comes up. So how to fix this minimum wage, and more importantly how to implement these minimum wages legislations. That is what the last chapter talks about it. And it says that at the end of the day, what you have to do is that the government must have definitely one minimum wage act. This minimum wage should be applicable to all occupations, all professions. It has to be minimum wage, and based on that the state governments can be given freedom to fix minimum wages definitely above but not below that, depending on the conditions in the state, because minimum wages are always fixed on the basis of cost of living index. They are always fixed on the basis of this cost of living index. As I said that in some states, this cost of living index is very high. For example, in Delhi, cost of living is very high. Obviously, minimum wages have to be very high. In other states, or you go to Bengal or Bihar, cost of living is relatively low. That is the reason why minimum wages can be low. But what economic survey says is that you must fix minimum wages. And while talking about these minimum wages, economic survey says that the problem with the government is that they don't have complete information. That is the reason why it says that the decisions have to be taken on the basis of what survey calls bounded rationality. One of the behavioral economists, Herbert Simon, talked about bounded rationality. It says that when you are fixing the minimum wages, you are fixing minimum wages under so many constraints. One is, you don't know exactly the cost of living in each and every state. You don't know exactly, what is the alternative, what is the opportunity cost for the people, and you don't know exactly what are the different kinds of professions. You don't have complete information about all the states. For example, in hilly states, cost of living can be different. It can be high or low depending on the tastes and preferences of the people. In urban cities, cost of living can be very high. In rural areas, it can be low. Government can come out with what is called the universal common minimum wage only when it has all this information at its disposal. Since it has it does not have the complete information, what the government has to do at best is calculate this cost of living index universally for the entire country by taking into consideration certain variables and come out with what is called a minimum wage based on bounded rationality. And later it can give freedom to the states to fix minimum wages. And more importantly, it is not about the Minimum Wages Act. This Minimum Wages Act was there right from 1948 onwards. We are in 2019, more than 70 years. The problem is in its implementation. For example, I am a landless laborer. I am employed by landlord and he is not paying me minimum wages. What can I do? Can I show him DD Bus and Lakshmikant combined together? Articles 14, 15, 16, 17, everything. Can I teach him polity for 1 hour free of cost? That is where we need to have better grievance redressal mechanisms. That is what economic survey talks about. You must have more than the Minimum Wages Acts which already exist in our country. We need effective implementation. We need effective implementation. Then only we can protect or then only we can ensure inclusive growth. We can only ensure inclusive growth. Why? Because we can have inclusive growth only when we protect the lives of ordinary people. We can we can fulfill the basic needs of common people only by ensuring these things. So this is what the first booklet of economic survey says, and this is about, as I said, all the theoretical aspects. Tomorrow we can see the second booklet. It is mostly current economy, and it does not take much of time because most of the things we already have discussed. Tomorrow we will see that, and we will also look at the solutions provided by budget, whether the solutions provided by budget are sufficient or not, and more importantly, whatever the statistics that are being provided in the economic survey and budget are they true or not? That also we will have to analyze. So tomorrow we are meeting at the same time and we will complete those things.
For this entire economic survey, do we need to read the entire booklet, or just a summary will do it? Just on your
As I said that what I will do is that I will mark important pages.
Okay.
You read those pages.
That will.
In our Chhattisgarh, we have 300 rupees per month from last year.
300 rupees.
Yes, and for 150 days work instead of 100.
NREGA. I am not talking about NREGA, minimum wages.
No, I was talking about MD
Acha.
for Haryana, and minimum wage is also increased from this year on.
But do they pay?
Huh?
Do they pay? Will they pay?
That is institutional.
No, that is good.